Listen, there's something you need to understand, and I'm going to say it like it is. Stop being nice to women. Now pause, because I'm not telling you to stop being kind or stop being respectful. Those things should be part of your foundation as a man. What I'm talking about is the kind of niceness that's rooted in fear. The kind that bends your truth just to avoid tension. The kind that silences your instincts so you can stay agreeable. You think being nice will win her over, that if you put her first, play it safe, avoid friction, and say all the right things, she'll choose you. But what if I told you that in trying so hard to be liked, you become invisible? Because women don't fall for the man who erases himself in the name of harmony. They remember the man who stands firm in who he is, the one who isn't afraid to say no, the one who doesn't seek approval, but lives in alignment. Stop trying to be the man who fits into her world. Become the man who builds his own. And if that's a journey you're ready to walk, you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to Stoic Station. If this video resonates with you, give it a like. Let's keep walking this path. Not to be liked, but to become unshakable. Are you ready? Let's dive in. 1. Stop being too nice mindset. Kindness without backbone is not strength. There comes a point in every man's life where he must confront a painful truth. Being endlessly nice does not guarantee love, respect, or even recognition. You may have spent years believing that if you just gave enough, compromised enough, or sacrificed enough, eventually you'd be valued. But the reality is, when you mold yourself into what others want, you begin to disappear, not just from their view, but from your own reflection. True strength doesn't come from silence, from softening your edges, or from playing it safe. It comes from standing in your truth, even when it's inconvenient. It comes from daring to take up space in a world that often asks men to shrink themselves for acceptance. Women may appreciate a kind gesture, but what they remember, what they feel, is presence. They are drawn to the man who speaks with conviction, who moves with direction, who knows who he is and where he's going. When you always say yes, when you bend to avoid conflict, when you trade honesty for approval, you're not being kind, you're being invisible. You were not created to live in the shadows of someone else's expectations. You were made to walk boldly in your own light. So stop asking, what does she want me to be? And start asking, who am I when I'm no longer afraid of not being chosen? Because the truth is, when you stop trying to be what she wants and start being what you were born to be, a man rooted in principle, clarity, and confidence, something shifts. You no longer chase validation, you embody it. And that kind of man doesn't beg for connection. He becomes the reason it happens. 2. Breaking free from people-pleasing. You're not here to entertain, you're here to lead. There's a certain exhaustion that comes with always being the agreeable one. The man who says all the right things, who avoids confrontation at all costs, who bends just enough so no one ever feels uncomfortable around him. On the surface, it looks like kindness. But beneath that mask lies something heavier: resentment, confusion, and a growing sense that you're slowly fading into the background of your own life. People-pleasing isn't selflessness, it's fear in disguise. Fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough, fear of being seen and still not chosen. And for many men, especially those in their late 30s or early 40s, it's a deeply ingrained pattern, one learned over time through heartbreak, criticism, or years of trying to be what everyone else needed. You tell yourself that if you just work harder at being liked, you'll finally find the love and respect you've been waiting for. But the truth is far more sobering. The more you chase her approval, the more you lose your own. The more you try to become what she wants, the less of you there is left to love. You weren't born to perform. You're not here to juggle your emotions for applause or to dance around her expectations just to be tolerated. That's not leadership. That's quiet desperation. Real leadership begins when you no longer abandon yourself to keep someone else comfortable. It starts the moment you decide that your truth, your values, and your peace matter just as much, if not more, than being accepted. Because the man who is always pleasing is never at peace. He's always watching for her reactions, always adjusting to avoid conflict, always hoping to be seen. And in doing so, he becomes invisible, predictable, easy to dismiss. But the man who stops performing, he becomes undeniable. He doesn't need validation to breathe. He doesn't shrink when she's upset. He leads, not with arrogance, but with calm certainty. He speaks honestly. He holds space for his own needs. He knows that disagreement isn't rejection, and that saying no doesn't make him difficult. It makes him real. When you stop people-pleasing, something powerful happens. You stop settling. You stop handing out your energy like it's worthless. And in that stillness, in that grounded place of self-respect, you begin to attract a different kind of relationship. One that's built not on performance, but on presence, not on approval, but on alignment. You don't need to be entertaining. You need to be intentional. So here's the shift. Stop waiting for her to validate your worth. Stop trying to earn your place through over-functioning, over-explaining, over-giving. You don't owe her a performance. You owe yourself a return to your truth. Because when a man stops trying to please and starts living with purpose, he doesn't just become more powerful, he becomes unforgettable. 3. Master emotional boundaries. Saying no is the most masculine thing you can do. There's a quiet strength in a man who can look someone in the eye and calmly say, no. No drama, no apology, just truth. That kind of self-assurance doesn't come from ego. It comes from experience, from learning, often the hard way, that saying yes to everything leads to resentment, exhaustion, and the slow erosion of your identity. You see, many men confuse saying yes with being loving, supportive, or kind. But a man without emotional boundaries isn't being kind. He's being consumed. He gives too much, absorbs too much, and loses too much of himself in the process. A man who always says yes becomes forgettable, predictable, taken for granted. And deep down, he knows it. He starts to feel like a shell, polite, agreeable, easy to be around, but never truly seen or respected. Saying no, firmly but with calm certainty, is not rejection. It's self-respect in action. It's a declaration that your energy, your peace, and your presence are not up for grabs. You don't have to raise your voice or build a wall. You just need to know where you end and where others begin. Women feel this. A woman may not always say it out loud, but she instinctively senses when a man lacks boundaries. She'll test for them, not because she wants to push you away, but because she wants to feel your strength, your edges, your depth. When a man has no limits, she doesn't trust his yes because it means nothing. But when you say no with grounded clarity, she knows you mean what you say and stand where you are. And here's the truth. The right woman will not be threatened by your standards. She'll be drawn to them. She'll lean in, not pull away, because real intimacy isn't built on constant accommodation. It's built on mutual respect, and that starts with you respecting yourself. Boundaries are not about keeping others out. They're about keeping yourself intact. They define the space where your authenticity lives. So don't be afraid to say no, to walk away, to take your time, to protect what matters to you, because every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with your truth, you say no to the man you're becoming. And the man who can say no without guilt is the man who finally stands tall in his own life. That man doesn't seek permission. He leads. He doesn't beg for peace. he embodies it. And that is unmistakably masculine. 4. Self-worth empowerment. You teach her how to treat you by what you tolerate. There's a moment, often subtle, often silent, when a man teaches the world how to treat him. And it doesn't happen through a speech, a declaration, or a list of boundaries. It happens in the small decisions, in the moments when he feels disrespected but says nothing, when he's overlooked but still shows up, when he's mistreated but convinces himself it's not that serious. That's when the lesson is taught. Because the truth is, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you tolerate. You get what you allow, what you stay quiet about, what you rationalize away in the name of love, patience, or hope. And if you continue to accept crumbs, don't be surprised when people stop offering you a seat at the table. Self-worth isn't a theory, it's a lived expression. It's not the motivational quote you repost or the speech you give your friends about being done with games. No. It's the quiet decision you make when no one's watching. It's how you carry yourself when the woman you want doesn't text you back. It's how you react when your efforts go unappreciated, when you're put last, when someone tries to diminish your value through silence or condescension. And in those moments, you either reinforce your standard or you rewrite it. Every time you stay in a space where you are not seen, you reinforce the lie that this is all you are worth. Every time you shrink to fit someone else's comfort zone, you send the message that you don't believe you deserve more. And women pick up on that, not just through what you say, but through what you allow. She watches how you respond to discomfort, how you handle disrespect, how you hold yourself when your worth is questioned. And based on that, she learns exactly how far she can push, how deep she can pull, and how much of yourself you're willing to give up in exchange for being chosen. But here's the shift. The most magnetic, unforgettable kind of man isn't the one who adapts himself to every woman he meets. It's the man who knows who he is and isn't afraid to walk away from anyone who doesn't honor that. He doesn't need to yell. He doesn't need to explain his value. He lives it. He walks into a room and brings a quiet certainty with him, not because he thinks he's better, but because he refuses to be less. He speaks clearly. He moves with intention, and when something doesn't sit right, he listens to that discomfort, not to fix the other person, but to protect the integrity of his own space. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. When you truly begin to respect yourself, you stop needing people to validate you. You stop chasing the woman who only gives you half of her energy. You stop trying to prove that you're enough. You just are. And that shift changes everything. You begin to attract differently. You begin to walk away faster. You begin to speak up without fear. And most importantly, you begin to feel whole with or without her approval. You teach her how to treat you not through control, but through consistency, not through begging, but through boundaries. And if she's the right woman, she'll rise to meet your standard, not resent it. But if she doesn't, you'll still be standing. Because the man who builds his worth from within no longer depends on how others see him to know who he is. He's not afraid to stand alone. He's not afraid to lose the woman who couldn't see him, because he refuses to lose himself ever again. Stop blending in to be accepted. Stop softening your truth to avoid rejection. Stand in the fire of your own self-respect, even when it's uncomfortable. Because when you do, the world won't just see your worth. It will adjust to it. 5. Inner strength motivational talk. Real attraction is built on authenticity, not approval. There comes a point in every man's life where he has to make a choice, to keep performing or to finally show up as who he really is. It's easy to fall into the trap of perfection. Society sells it. Social media glorifies it. Relationships sometimes demand it. You hear that you need to be more composed, more successful, more charming, more together if you want to be desired. So you start shaping yourself into a version that feels safer. You round off your edges, you measure every word, you suppress the parts of yourself that feel too raw, too real, too risky to be accepted. But here's the truth: the more you try to be perfect, the less anyone can actually feel you. Attraction isn't born out of approval. It doesn't ignite because you checked every box on her list. It doesn't come alive because you played it safe or memorized all the right things to say. Attraction happens in the spaces where your soul shows up unfiltered, in your tone, in your stillness, in your presence, in the moments when you're no longer trying to impress, but instead just allowing yourself to be seen exactly as you are. Real strength doesn't come from hiding your flaws. It comes from owning them without apology. It comes from walking into a room and not needing anyone's reaction to validate your worth. The most powerful man is not the loudest, not the flashiest, not the one who performs best under pressure. He's the one who knows who he is, even when others don't understand him. You don't need a new trick, a new game, a new strategy to be more attractive. You don't need to manipulate the outcome. You don't need to adjust your truth to keep someone interested. You need honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. Because when you're honest, something shifts in your energy. You stop performing. You stop chasing. You stop fearing the moments of silence or misunderstanding. You stop trying to be chosen, and you start choosing yourself. The man who is most magnetic is the one who doesn't hide behind anything. He's not reckless with his words, but he's not filtered either. He doesn't fear being misunderstood because he's not speaking for approval, he's speaking from truth. And that energy is rare. That energy is unforgettable. There's a calm confidence in authenticity, the kind that doesn't shake when someone questions you, the kind that doesn't shrink when someone walks away. Because when you're truly yourself, rejection doesn't sting the same. You're not losing a connection. You're shedding a mask that was never yours to wear. And in doing so, you make room for the people who are actually meant for you. The irony is this: the moment you stop trying to be perfect is the moment you become most desirable. Because people can feel when you're free. They can feel when you're standing in something real. That kind of presence doesn't require explanation. It radiates through the way you carry yourself, the way you make eye contact, the way you say no when it's easier to say yes. Authenticity is not about telling everyone your life story. It's not about oversharing or turning your pain into a performance. It's about alignment, when your inner world matches your outer expression, when you don't need to wear a mask because nothing inside you feels ashamed or hidden, when you can sit in a room full of people and not be the loudest, yet still be felt. The world doesn't need more men who've learned how to impress. It needs more men who've remembered how to be real, men who can stand in uncertainty without pretending, men who can speak honestly even if it costs them comfort, men who don't base their identity on how well they're received, but on how true they are to themselves. So ask yourself this: who are you when you're not trying to be perfect? Who are you when you're not chasing her attention, her validation, her approval? What kind of man do you become when you're no longer performing? That version of you, the one who moves with conviction, even when alone, that's the man the world needs more of. That's the man women feel drawn to, even if they can't explain why. That's the man who doesn't compete for love, but attracts it through his presence alone. You don't need to be polished. You don't need to be flawless. You just need to be real. To own your voice, to embrace your scars, to live as if your truth matters more than being liked. Because the man who has the courage to show up fully, especially when it's uncomfortable, is the man who ends up with a life that actually feels like his own. And that, in the end, is what makes you powerful. Not because you became who they wanted, but because you remembered who you were all along. 6. How to take control of your life. Stop performing, start leading. There's a quiet tragedy in living your life on someone else's terms. And yet, so many men find themselves doing exactly that, drifting through relationships, deferring decisions, waiting for permission to feel powerful again. Somewhere along the way, they lost the grip on their own steering wheel. They let the rhythm of someone else's desires, expectations, or moods determine their next move. Not because they're weak, but because they thought compromise was the price of connection. But there comes a point, usually after enough silence, enough frustration, enough wondering why it never feels quite right, where something inside you finally speaks up. This isn't who I'm meant to be. You're not here to adjust endlessly. You're not here to audition for approval, and you're certainly not here to follow someone who doesn't even know where she's going. You are here to lead, not in dominance but in direction, not with control but with clarity. That means taking back ownership of your life, one decision at a time. Leadership starts when you stop outsourcing your self-worth, when you stop letting fleeting interest or inconsistent attention define your value. You begin to reclaim your center when you realize that being chosen means nothing if you had to become someone else to make it happen. You set the tone, you define the standard, you hold the frame. That isn't arrogance, it's responsibility. It's stepping into the truth that not everyone deserves access to you. Not every woman, no matter how beautiful, is aligned with where you're going. And it's not your job to convince her, chase her, or lose yourself for her comfort. When you take control of your life, everything shifts. You no longer tolerate chaos disguised as passion. You stop romanticizing the thrill of uncertainty and begin to crave the peace of alignment. You build a life that reflects your values, and only those who respect that vision are invited to stay. This isn't about being unapproachable. It's about being unavailable to anything that disrupts your peace, your growth, or your direction. You are not lost. You just forgot how much power you have when you stop chasing and start choosing. And the moment you make that shift, you no longer need to be seen to feel solid. You become a man who leads, not by performance, but by presence. Take the wheel. Your life was never meant to be driven by someone else's hands. 7. No-nonsense motivation for leaders. Challenge the game, don't just play it. There's a certain kind of man the world quietly fears. Not because he's loud, not because he's aggressive, but because he refuses to play by rules that were never written for him in the first place. He doesn't follow for the sake of fitting in. He doesn't shrink for the sake of being liked. He doesn't nod in agreement when something deep inside him says no. You weren't born to be agreeable. You weren't made to smile through your silence or contort yourself just to gain acceptance. The very essence of leadership, true, grounded, authentic leadership, is the ability to challenge what everyone else is afraid to question. That includes the woman you're dating. That includes the culture you're living in. But more than anything, that includes you. Too many men are taught to play small, to follow the script, stay in line, be polite, be passive, be predictable. They chase approval like it's oxygen. They think success means adapting fast and speaking softly. But let's be honest, no man who ever changed anything meaningful about his life or this world did it by playing the game exactly as it was handed to him. Real leaders break patterns. They don't seek validation from broken systems. They don't ask if they're allowed to move differently. They just do. And the world eventually follows. You must be willing to question everything: your conditioning, your relationships, your own comfort zones. Growth doesn't come from being right all the time. It comes from being brave enough to disrupt what's no longer true for you. That's what makes you magnetic. That's what separates you from the countless others who are still stuck trying to be liked instead of respected. So challenge her, not with ego, but with depth. Don't just agree to keep the peace. Speak what's real. Challenge yourself, especially when it's uncomfortable. The version of you that's meant to lead won't be found in the crowd. It will only emerge when you have the courage to stand alone. Being different isn't rebellion, it's remembrance. It's remembering that you were never meant to blend in. You were meant to build a life, a path, a legacy that doesn't just repeat what's been done, but redefines what's possible. Real leaders don't wait for approval. They walk into the unknown and create something worthy of being followed. And if that means walking alone at first, so be it. Because a man who dares to challenge the game is the only kind who ever changes it. 8. Success-focused mindset shift. Stop seeking permission to be great. At some point, every man stands at a quiet crossroads, the moment where he realizes he's been waiting for permission, waiting for support, waiting for someone, often a woman, to see his potential, to believe in his dreams, to validate that who he's becoming is worthy of celebration. And sometimes, without even realizing it, he builds his entire identity around her recognition. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That green light you're hoping for, it's not coming. And the deeper truth is, it's not supposed to. Because no one, not even the most supportive partner, can hand you the greatness you're meant to claim for yourself. No one can believe in you deeply enough to replace the belief you need to develop on your own. That's not her job. It never was. That responsibility lies squarely with you, and that might sting at first, because we've been conditioned to believe that love is the fuel, that affirmation is the trigger, that support must come first before we take bold steps. But purpose doesn't wait on applause. Legacy doesn't ask to be seen. Greatness doesn't beg for someone else to understand it. It rises, whether or not it's being watched. Too many men delay their journey. They hold back their potential, soften their hunger, and postpone their evolution because she isn't ready, because she doesn't get it, because she questions the time, the effort, the sacrifice. And in doing so, they tie their ambition to someone else's comfort. But you weren't born to play small just because someone else can't envision your expansion. You weren't made to sit still in your own life, hoping that one day she'll look at you and say, "Now I see it. Now I approve. Now you may begin." You begin anyway. You rise anyway. You build anyway. You build your body, not because she notices, but because it's a reflection of discipline, self-respect, and the structure that supports your mental clarity. You build your mind, not because it's impressive, but because it's how you break generational cycles and unlock doors no one else thought could be opened. You build your mission, not for applause, but because that's where your soul stops suffocating. Stop handing her the keys to your becoming. Stop waiting for her to understand your fire before you feed it. Some people won't see your vision until it's finished, and that's okay. That's not betrayal. That's part of the process. In fact, the men who build extraordinary lives are often misunderstood in the beginning, by partners, by friends, even by themselves. There's nothing noble about delaying your calling for the sake of keeping a relationship comfortable. There's nothing admirable about dimming your drive just to maintain harmony with someone who hasn't yet learned how to walk beside a man on a mission. You can love her and still move forward. You can care about her confusion and still chase clarity. You can hold space for her to catch up, but that doesn't mean you stand still. Your purpose isn't optional. It's not a hobby. It's not a luxury you indulge when everything else feels secure. It's your core, your fire, your reason for being, and it's far too important to leave it in someone else's hands. Let her find you where you belong, not on the sidelines of your own life, not stuck in analysis waiting for her emotional permission, but on the road you were born to walk. Let her meet you in the middle of movement, in the depths of your work, in the gravity of your growth. And if she can't meet you there, you still go, because your journey is not a performance for her belief. It's a promise you made to yourself. There will be days when your ambition makes people uncomfortable, when your discipline creates distance, when your priorities are misunderstood. That's not a reason to shrink. That's confirmation you're doing something right. She's not supposed to give you permission. She's not supposed to fully get it, especially not in the beginning, because she hasn't seen the man you're about to become. Hell, you haven't even seen him fully yet. You're still in the process of building him, day by day, rep by rep, choice by choice. And if she's the right woman, the one who truly belongs beside you, not ahead of you, not behind you, but beside you, she'll recognize that. She'll respect the space you need. She'll support the man you are and the one you're becoming, not by trying to mold it, but by holding her own standard too. But if she can't, if your rising threatens her, if your clarity creates conflict instead of connection, then maybe that's the lesson. Your path is sacred, and not everyone can walk it with you. Let go of the idea that every love must last. Some connections are there to reveal the parts of you you've been hiding. Some are there to show you what it looks like when you give away your power too easily. And some are there to teach you how to rise alone, so you can finally learn how to lead, not from loneliness, but from alignment. This isn't about being cold or distant. It's about being centered, grounded in your purpose, alive in your pursuit, and unwilling to compromise the call that keeps you awake at night for a version of love that keeps you small. You don't need her green light. You are the green light. So stop waiting. Stop hesitating. Stop asking for permission to be the man you were born to become. Get up. Get clear. Get moving. Building, grow, create, expand, and let her either rise with you or watch you from a distance she chose. Because your life isn't waiting, and greatness doesn't knock twice. 9. Powerful self-discipline tips. Discomfort is not the enemy. It's the doorway. Most men spend their entire lives avoiding discomfort. They call it logic, maturity, or peacekeeping, but underneath it all is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. And so they chase the smooth road, the one without resistance, without confrontation, without any emotional weight. They smile when they want to speak. They agree when they want to challenge. They disappear in silence when their soul is begging them to rise. But the truth is simple and unavoidable. Nothing of real value is built in comfort. Growth costs comfort. Strength requires friction. And the kind of love that nourishes your spirit, the kind that lasts, that moves, that awakens, begins not in ease, but in exposure, in truth, in presence, in you standing inside the fire of your own fear and staying there, not to suffer, but to become something more solid than the man you were yesterday. We've been sold a lie that discipline is harsh and discomfort is a threat. But discipline, real, grounded, intentional discipline, is what separates the man who talks about change from the one who lives it. And discomfort? It's not the enemy, it's the doorway. It's the signal that you're brushing up against the very edge of your limitations, and the invitation to move past them. You say you want to be powerful, you say you want to be respected, but do you show up when it's hard? Do you lean in when everything in you wants to run? Do you tell the truth even when your voice shakes? Do you hold the line when it would be easier to please? Because that's where power is born, not in performance, but in presence. You think confidence is about looking unbothered. It's not. It's about choosing to show up even when you are, choosing to engage even when you feel uncertain, choosing to speak with depth when silence would protect your ego. That kind of man, the one who embraces discomfort without dramatizing it, is rare. And women feel that, not because he overpowers the room, but because he grounds it. He doesn't fake strength, he earns it, in private, through the lonely hours, through the honest reflection, through every small choice to face what others avoid. He chooses to stop numbing, he chooses to stop running, he chooses to carry what is his, not because he enjoys the weight, but because he's no longer willing to abandon the man he's meant to become. You don't need to win every battle. You don't need to be perfect. But you do need to show up, to hold the pressure without collapsing, to take responsibility for your energy, your responses, your vision. Because leadership isn't loud, it's consistent. And the man who can lead himself through discomfort will never be led by fear again. So stop hiding behind kindness. Stop avoiding the tension in the name of peace. Stop selling your voice for approval. The next level of your life is not going to greet you with open arms. It's going to test your resolve. It's going to challenge the comfort you've mistaken for strength. And only the man who's disciplined enough to hold the discomfort will make it through. This isn't about being hardened. It's about being honest. Honest enough to say, this is hard, and I'm still here. Honest enough to admit when you're unsure, and still move forward anyway. Honest enough to walk into situations that make your hands shake, your heart race, your ego scream, and stay centered in your values. That's where real masculine power lives, not in dominance, but in depth. In the ability to be calm in chaos, in the courage to remain present in pain, in the discipline to keep showing up when it would be easier to quit. Because the man who can hold that kind of pressure, with grace, with focus, with integrity, he holds everything. Looking back at each one of these truths, I realize they all share a common thread, a quiet rebellion against the parts of us that were conditioned to shrink. As men, we were taught to be agreeable, likable, easy to be around. We were told that love could be earned through silence, sacrifice, and endless effort. But what we weren't told is that in the process of pleasing, we often lose ourselves. I know what it feels like to overextend, to say yes when everything in you screams no, to trade your truth for temporary peace. I know the silent frustration of being the good guy, the one who's always there, always agreeable, always dependable, and still invisible. I've seen what happens when self-worth is outsourced, when boundaries are blurred, when purpose is delayed for someone else's comfort. But I've also seen what changes when you stop asking for permission to live fully. When you say no, not from anger, but from clarity. When you stop performing and start leading. When you stop molding yourself into someone else's idea of who you should be and start walking in alignment with who you truly are. The truth is, you don't become powerful by avoiding conflict. You become powerful by choosing truth over comfort, by choosing presence over performance, by choosing growth, even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when no one else understands why you're doing it. And that's the shift every man must make if he wants to live a life that feels like his own. You are not here to blend in. You are not here to be tolerated. You are not here to chase love, approval, or comfort. You are here to build, to lead, to speak with clarity, to live with integrity. You are here to define your standards, protect your peace, and create a life so aligned that only those who truly see you are allowed to stay. Self-worth is not something you earn by being agreeable. It's something you awaken by being authentic. So the next time you're tempted to silence yourself just to be accepted, remember this. The world doesn't need more men who are easy to be around. It needs more men who are impossible to forget. Choose depth. Choose discomfort. Choose discipline. Choose truth. Because when you do, you won't just find your power. You'll finally stop surviving and start becoming. If this message spoke to something inside you, if it reminded you of the man you've been and the man you're becoming, then this is your invitation. At Stoic Station, we don't chase validation. We build presence. We reclaim power. We live with clarity, lead with calm, and rise with purpose. So, if you're ready to stop performing and start becoming, if you're ready to break free from approval, step into discomfort, and finally lead your life on your own terms. Subscribe to Stoic Station, where we don't just talk about strength, we embody it. And together we rise, not to impress, but to become undeniable. Stay grounded, stay true, and above all, never trade who you are, just to be accepted by someone who can't see you. I'll see you in the next video.